A clay tablet cracks in the archaeologist's hands, its edges sharp, surface worn, yet preserved for millennia beneath the soil. This is not poetry carved for art's sake. It is not myth spun for entertainment. It is not scripture handed down through generations. Instead, it is a legal contract, an unvarnished record of human agreements dating back 4,000 years. It tells the story of a childless couple who adopt an heir with specific conditions. The heir must care for them in their old age and inherit their property only if those conditions are fulfilled. Now, pause. Because that exact scenario appears almost word for word in the story of Abraham in the book of Genesis. Here's the question no skeptic likes answering. How did Genesis preserve legal customs that vanished millennia before Moses was even born? What makes this discovery even more astounding is that these legal customs were completely unknown to the ancient Israelites themselves at the time Genesis was compiled. These laws were forgotten, lost beneath layers of history, yet they survived intact within the biblical text, waiting for modern archaeology to reveal their origins. This challenges us to reconsider how we understand the transmission of ancient tradition and memory. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life, faith, and facts. Where ancient mysteries meet modern exploration. While AI technology powers our visuals, the evidence and interpretations we discuss are grounded firmly in scholarly research and archaeological findings. Our goal is to make the past accessible and vivid while maintaining intellectual honesty and respect for both the ancient record and the modern. Viewer, for centuries, critics have insisted that Genesis reflects late Israelite thinking, a backward projection of customs and social norms from the Iron Age into a mythical, distant past. They argue that the stories are literary creations designed to validate contemporary cultural and religious ideas, not historical records. Yet archaeology tells a dramatically different story, one grounded in concrete evidence. The social world described in Genesis, especially around Abraham, is not aligned with Israelite customs from the Iron Age. Instead, it matches Middle Bronze Age Mesopotamia with surgical precision, particularly in areas no religious storyteller would bother inventing, such as the fine print of contracts, inheritance laws, surrogate motherhood, and adoption rituals. Tonight, we will dive deep into the clay tablets unearthed at Nuzi and Mari. Documents buried for thousands of years and only recently revealed by modern archaeology. Stick with us until the end, when we will reveal a crucial legal detail in Genesis that directly contradicts Mosaic law, but perfectly fits Abraham's time. That revelation reshapes how we understand biblical history. This investigation is not merely academic. It speaks to the heart of biblical reliability. When archaeology and text align so precisely, it suggests a continuity of memory and tradition that defies simple dismissals. It encourages us to listen carefully to the biblical narrative as a genuine window into ancient reality rather than a later fabrication. The skeptical position on Genesis is deceptively simple, since the Bible was written by later Israelites. The stories must reflect their own cultural and legal norms. Therefore, any customs or laws described should line up with what we know about ancient Israelite society, especially during the monarchy or the time of Moses. But this claim quickly falls apart once we look closely at the details. If Genesis were indeed written centuries after Moses or during the monarchic period, it should logically reflect Israelite law, marriage customs, and inheritance practices. Instead, Genesis repeatedly presents scenarios that directly violate later biblical laws, all while aligning perfectly with much older Near Eastern customs, long forgotten by later Israelites. Consider Abraham's troubling concern in Genesis 15. What if Eliezer of Damascus will inherit my estate? This phrase sounds odd to modern ears, especially in light of Israelite laws favoring biological descendants. But to an archaeologist, this is a familiar legal problem, one deeply embedded in ancient Near Eastern society. This disconnect between Genesis and later Israelite laws isn't accidental. It signals that the stories of the patriarchs preserve traditions from a much earlier period, long before the formation of Israelite identity. The narrative does not conform to the laws and customs that shaped Israel during or after the Exodus, but instead preserves the legal world of a distant and vanished society. At the ancient city of Nuzi, located east of the Tigris River, archaeologists uncovered thousands of clay tablets dating back to approximately 1,800 BC to 1,500 BC. These tablets provide detailed records of daily life, including legal contracts and family arrangements. Among these, one striking practice emerges. Childless couples frequently adopted household servants as legal heirs. This adoption wasn't mere charity. It came with serious obligations. The adopted heir was required to care for the aging parents and manage their estate. But inheritance was conditional on fulfilling these responsibilities. Interestingly, if a biological son was later born, he could displace the adopted heir, but only by providing adequate compensation. This mirrors Abraham's dilemma in Genesis precisely. The legal framework is not just similar or approximate. It is structurally identical in form and function. Such specificity cannot be explained as legend or invention. Legends rarely preserve legal technicalities with such accuracy. This suggests that Genesis preserves an ancient legal memory rooted in a historical social context. The precision of this match between Nuzi Tablets and Genesis challenges the assumption that the patriarchal narratives were created centuries later with no historical basis. Instead, it supports the idea that these stories reflect an oral tradition preserving legal customs that would have otherwise been lost to history. These tablets bear cuneiform impressions, wedges pressed into wet clay before being hardened by fire. These are not mere artifacts. They are the preserved paperwork of an ancient civilization, contracts, receipts, court cases. Within these ancient documents lives the social reality that Genesis describes. Genesis 16 tells a story that has puzzled and scandalized modern readers. Sarah, unable to bear children, gives her slave Hagar to Abraham as a surrogate. Modern readers often view this as strange or even unjust, but Nuzi Tablets clarify the practice. In that time, a barren wife could legally provide a slave woman to bear a child on her behalf. The resulting child belonged to the wife, not the slave. This surrogate motherhood was an accepted and legally recognized solution to infertility. However, if the wife later bore a biological son, the surrogate's position diminished, creating tension and conflict over inheritance rights. This dynamic, full of jealousy and legal complexities, is exactly what we read in Genesis. But here is the critical point. This custom vanished centuries before the establishment of Israel as a nation. By the time of Moses, surrogate motherhood through slaves was forbidden by law. So why does Genesis preserve this ancient, uncomfortable custom, accurately and without any attempt to justify or edit it? The most plausible answer is that it was not composed later, but faithfully remembered from an older legal tradition. These Nuzi tablets demonstrate a legal culture quite different from later Israelite norms, one where social status, family ties, and property rights were negotiated in ways that seem foreign to us today. Their survival within Genesis challenges us to rethink when and how these traditions were recorded. It's evidence of a deep memory stretching back to a time before Israel became a nation. Now, let's journey north to the city of Mari on the Euphrates River. In the 1930s, excavations revealed over 20,000 clay tablets, offering a window into royal correspondence, military orders, and census records from the Middle Bronze Age. Among these texts are letters and administrative documents describing the movements of semi-nomadic pastoralists, groups moving seasonally between cities and grazing lands, negotiating water rights, making alliances, and establishing hospitality agreements. Sound familiar? Genesis portrays Abraham not as a desert savage, but as a liminal figure, someone urban-trained, mobile, wealthy, and politically astute. He negotiates treaties, manages livestock, and interacts with rulers, exactly as described in the Mari tablets. These texts also shed light on the legal conflicts Abraham faces in Genesis 21, involving land rights and hospitality customs. The Mari Tablets confirm that the social and political environment of Abraham's time was complex and sophisticated, not the simplistic desert nomadism often assumed. These documents reveal a world of diplomacy, legal negotiation, and social contracts that mirror the biblical narrative in detail and spirit. Let's stop pretending these parallels are mere coincidence. If Genesis was composed in a later period, we would expect it to smooth over outdated customs, moralize problematic practices, or update stories to fit contemporary law and ethics. Instead, Genesis preserves these customs exactly as they were, including practices that would later be condemned or forbidden. So here is the critical question. Why would a later Israelite author deliberately include and preserve customs that their own society's laws condemned? Unless these details came from an earlier memory, they consciously refuse to edit. This retention of wrong customs speaks volumes. It suggests that the stories are not literary inventions or ideological propaganda, but faithful transmissions of a historical memory, preserved with fidelity despite conflicting with later legal standards. This invites us to reconsider the origins of these texts as genuine historical testimony. Here is the crucial detail promised earlier. Under Mosaic law, inheritance through a household servant was illegal and unacceptable. Yet Genesis presents such an arrangement as normal, at least until divine intervention changes the course of events. This demonstrates that Genesis is not shaped by Israel's later laws. Rather, Israel's laws appear to have developed in response to, or after, the social world described in Genesis. Abraham is not a character in a retrojected fantasy or a later invented myth. He lives within a legal environment that archaeology has only rediscovered in the last century. This is not mythology. It is historical depth, preserved through the memory of ancient legal customs. By understanding this, we see Genesis not as a simple theological text, but as a complex historical document capturing a real, ancient world. Its legal details serve as breadcrumbs leading us back to a forgotten era, one that modern archaeology is finally uncovering. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. If the evidence you've seen in this deep dive has challenged your assumptions, consider this. The mission of Faith and Facts is to systematically dismantle skepticism by demonstrating that the Bible is the most archaeologically confirmed book in human history. To explore the full scope of evidence, be sure to watch our full-length documentary compilation, Genesis on Trial: Archaeology versus Skepticism, where all these proofs come together in one comprehensive presentation. If you want to support this work and join the journey of uncovering biblical truth, please hit that like button, subscribe for weekly evidence updates, and share this video with one skeptic you know. Because the forgotten clay tablets don't lie. Together, we can build a bridge between ancient history and modern faith, showing that the stories of Genesis are rooted in real people, real laws, and real events waiting to be rediscovered.